Women on a Green Mission. Follow along as two friends document their unfurling permaculture journeys.
Join our chats each week where we'll be sharing how we and others apply permaculture to our gardens and daily life.
We're no experts. We're at the start of our journey, fumbling our way to a greener life. We love your company along the way. Hello.
Hi,
How you doing? I'm good.
Good. It's a nice sunny day here. How about you?
Oh, it's starting to. I'm actually seeing the sun start to poke through. So it was a little bit foggy to start with, but we've had so much rain. It's been so bad.
Wait, before we get too far into the podcast, happy birthday!
Oh, thank you.
I didn't know this, but today's Joe's birthday.
Snuck that one in. Usually I do forget. I have forgotten my own, but I'm terrible with birthdays. I'm bloody hopeless. So, yeah, any of my friends listening can tell you, like, I have forgotten everyone's birthday at some stage. And like a week later, I was like, oh, by the way, happy for being born, like last week, all those years ago. But I've forgotten my own as well. Like, I've had years where Ant's gotten up and he's made me a coffee and he's tidied up, and I get up and he's like, happy birthday. I'm like, what? Oh, actually, speaking of, I better just turn my phone off so that, because Mum and Dad will ring. They ring me every year. They ring everyone every year, and they wish everyone a happy birthday by singing happy birthday to them. Like, it's the worst singing ever, and it's brilliant. Like, we all love it. So, yeah. Actually, if they do ring, I should probably answer and just let them.
Oscar's born on Talk Like a Pirate Day, so my mum calls and sings happy birthday talking like a pirate, but she just sounds like a mix of like Russian and Spanish and Asian, and she's like terrible at accents. It's so funny.
I didn't know that was a thing, Talk Like a Pirate Day. How do they come up with this stuff? Seriously.
I know. The 19th of September.
I will have to remember that. I'm going to put that in my calendar now because, now Oscar's going to get phone calls from everyone singing like a pirate. I love it. Oh, excuse me.
So, besides your birthday, what have you been up to?
Oh, it's been wet. Like, we've had, we've had so much rain, and we've had, we had 10 mil, just over 10 mil in one day. Like, I come home and, like, there was just water flowing down pathways, and like the transpiration pit, the ducks loved it because they just got in there. It was like a second dam for them. So so it's been really wet. We lost a sheep, so our little leg off, not that we have favourites, but our favourite, because he was easier to handle and a bit more affectionate. He'd gotten into the chicken feed, but that was on the weekend. And so we didn't really think they actually got much of it, but I think the little bugger actually broke back in and just like really just went to town, just gorged himself. And no idea, like, I fed him that night. Like, they usually get, like a half a scoop, half a dipper of sheep and cattle nut, and they usually, eat some of the horse feed as well, which is fine. They can, everything in there's edible for sheep. And he was fine. Like, there was no sign of anything, because I know, usually if they get bloat, they can get quite uncomfortable and they're laying down, get up all the time, and they're sort of, like their left side's really distended, and nothing, no problems at all. And Ant went up to feed the following morning, and he rang me and said, we got a dead sheep. And I went, oh, seriously? So then... so I had to go to Sydney for work. I had work on, so I still had to haul ass down there. He had to go to work, and I'm like, okay, well, we'll just tarp him up, and rang one of the guys, that's retired around here that does a few odd jobs, and said, can you bring your little digger in and dig a hole? So he's come in and he's like, oh my God, it's so muddy. Like, he's just slipping and sliding everywhere, even on a mini excavator. But anyway, we got the hole dug, got him buried, and then 2 hours later, our mulch guy showed up. So there's an arborist locally that when he's just got extra mulch, he now drops it off at our place. Like, we still pay for it, but it's at a much discounted rate. And
Yeah.
like I just said to him, anytime you've got a load, I don't care, just drop it in, and then just I'll come and drop off some cash to your house and whatever.
Mm.
Yeah, so he so he rocked up and he's like, oh, it's so wet. I'll be careful on your lawn. And I'm like, we don't have lawn, we just have a grassed area that we haven't developed yet, so that's fine, whatever. Like, you're going to chew it up. And he got bogged because it was so wet. So then I had to, tow him out with a 4-wheel drive, like just enough to sort of, give him that pull. So
Yeah.
then he had to unload where he was, which was basically right in the middle, like where your caravan was. Basically,
Yeah.
that's where we now have a load of mulch, not over in the mulch bay that Ant had so carefully put together so that it was all neat and tidy. And I'm
Oh.
like, well, because he goes, you sure you want it here? And I'm like, don't really have a choice, mate. Like, you're bogged. Like, you need to offload some weight. So he's good. Yeah, so,
Wow.
but I'm not
Right.
I'm not complaining. I don't care. Bring mulch, dump it wherever. Like, we will take it because as like having mulch is just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
And being able to have lots of mulch so that you can give it a chance to age, so you don't suffer from nitrogen drawdown or anything like that when you're putting it on the gardens. Even better. So I just said to him,
Yeah.
yeah, keep it coming. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so we've had that. I've been harvesting so much in the garden at the moment. Like, we are just living on broccoli and cauliflower, and we cannot eat enough of it. Like, I had a friend pop by yesterday, and I'm like, here, take potato. I was basically grocery shopping. I'm like, here's a care pack. Go. I'm going to drop off some eggs to the cafe later this morning, and then dropping off another veggie box to a friend. And then I got my goddaughter coming up for my birthday later today, so I'll be sending her home with a heap of food. So we've got broccoli, we've got collies, we've got cabbages. The cabbages have gone gangbusters.
Yeah.
Brussels, we've got, like, this year has been, and I don't know why, because we haven't had really cold weather, and we haven't
Yeah.
had a lot of big frosts here. We had one decent frost, and where the Brussels are planted, like, there's no frost at all. But we've got really good Brussels. So I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm not
Cool.
fighting it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So what about you?
Same, wet here, very wet. We've been on flood watch. I think they said that we got like 100 mil of rain that first day. Like,
Oh
it
my
was
God.
so much rain,
You win.
and our block was like, it was like a river. Like, like it was that 8 weeks it rained. There's roads going under. Like, we're fine on our block where we are. It does all drain off eventually, but yeah, roads kind of going under and that kind of thing. Then it was dry kind of for a day, rained a bit again, and then we got dumped with a whole heap again, and we were on flood watch again for all the low spots around here. Sorry. So yeah, haven't really done much in the garden, but we've just been doing a lot of life admin, and there's a women in business, or actually mums in business group that I've joined. This is the third meeting that they've had. And that was really good. It's just like a nice diverse group of people, and we're all in different stages of our business. And, most of the kids are all the same age, but a couple women have older kids. So yeah, it's just nice. It's been really good to connect with some people and get advice from those that have gone before us, and, brainstorm and kind of bounce ideas off each other. And we've all got different kind
Yeah.
of zones of genius, so that's been really good, just trying to like get input from other people and what they're really good at. And yeah, it's just been really nice. So that's been a good community building thing for me, and just
So
so lovely meeting.
so does that mean you're, like, people caring?
I know, right? Look at me permaculturing.
Look at you go. But no, it's
Yeah,
it's
that's been
so
really
good though,
good.
because it's really important to to lean on people and have people lean on you as well, especially
Mm,
when you're starting something, like, you're starting to look at, your business for your property there, and what you can potentially do to make an income and what that looks like. And
mm,
and those early stages, it's challenging because you don't know what the goalposts look like. You don't even know what the goalposts you want them to look like yet. So
yeah,
it's really hard
yeah,
to
yeah,
put plans in place when it's hard to get a handle on the bigger picture. So
yeah,
yeah, to be able to have those conversations, and anyone that's been in business that's listening, they know it's fucking
Mm.
hard. It is really
Mm.
challenging. Not to dissuade, you or anyone else out there, because being in business is also awesome, but it is really
Just
challenging.
be
It has,
realistic. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and give yourself a lot of space and grace, because you've got to
Mm.
learn. Like, you've got to just screw things up as you go. Like, not monumentally, but you're making those mistakes along the way and go, okay,
Yeah.
that works for someone else, that doesn't work for me. We learned that
Yeah.
very early in the piece. Like, we were um, not following other people's models, but we were looking at what other people did and going, okay, well, that's a similar sort of business, so we'll copy that. Like, we'll try and give that a go. And then you'd sort of get a little way down
Mm-mm.
the path and go, oh, that doesn't work for me or our lifestyle or our relationship because of these dynamics. And yeah, so it's
Yeah.
finding all that. And so having people, especially other mums who have those specific
Yeah.
challenges of being a mum, being a partner, being in business, doing all of those things, that's gold.
Mm. It's funny because like Oscar's more the people person and has so many friends, and but moving up here, I think because he's working from home and I'm kind of with the kids and doing homeschooling and joining different groups, and like really I've made like a massive effort to kind of put myself out there. It's been a very stretchy time for me doing it, and some days I really struggle with it because I recharge my batteries by being on my own, and obviously the kids are always around, so that can be really hard to actually get that proper recharge. But yeah, it's been good. I've met a lot of people and there's so many like-minded people up here, and yeah, I'm really making an effort, which was one of my goals when we moved, to find community and connection and build that side of our life and our lifestyle, because I've said before, like we came at permaculture from a very gardening perspective, but that's something that we're definitely wanting to grow and upskill in. So yeah, it's been really good.
I think you're doing awesome, and yeah, I'm happy for you. I'm
No,
proud of you too. I'm having a bit of a mama moment. Like, I see you. I do. I see, like, over the time, like such a short period of time that we've known each other, like you've grown so much. Like, you've grown and you've
no.
expanded, and I do. I have little, not that I'm even though it's my birthday, not old enough to be your mum, but I do have little mama bear moments.
Yeah. No, thank you. So, what
Oh.
are we talking about today?
So, we're going to have a bit of a chat about getting a bit of a jump start on the spring garden. So, closing off winter. Not that there's a
Mm-hmm.
defined line, but, sort of, okay, what are we doing to wrap up our winter gardens? And then what are we doing getting ready for spring? So, it's a little bit more garden focused than,
Yeah.
holistic life. But, again, these themes can be translated across anything that you're doing. If you don't have a garden, then, okay, starting to think about what does spring now look like for you with maybe your activities or your health or connection or whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
So
Seasonality.
seasonality, exactly. I love that word. I think that's going to be the name, I think, of the episode. Seasonality. I like that.
Excellent.
So do you want to, considering that your poor garden has been smashed again by water, and it's interesting, like we were meant to have one of the driest winters ever, and I think we've had one of the wettest.
Mm.
Yeah, what's happening for you? What are you going to be doing to start to wind up in your garden and
Yeah.
kick
Yeah.
on?
So it's interesting. I was kind of doing a bit of an observational walk before I did anything. I found that my raised garden beds that are covered with insect netting, like
Mm-hmm.
the fruit fly netting, have done so much better than my uncovered ones, which is really interesting. And not because of the pests and bugs. I think it's actually because we don't have any hedgerows or wind protection, that little bit of mesh has maybe protected
Ah.
them a bit, and also maybe helped with, I mean, not a heat, like marginally made the soil warmer and
Mm-hmm.
just kept maybe humidity or warmth in there a bit more. So yes, they've done a lot better than my uncovered beds. The first bed I ever planted has been my worst performing bed. So it's actually just not thrived at all. Everything I've put in there has been okay for a little bit and then eventually fizzled out. So like my broad beans failed, my beans and peas failed in there. The flowers like cosmos that grow like weeds, they failed in there.
So
Nothing's really been
was that the
happy.
soil that you got bought in that was really crap, but
No,
you
it was
amended it?
before all
No.
that. No, it
Oh.
was before all that. So it's a mix of wood shavings. It's a hugelkultur bed, and then on
Mhm.
top of that, there's just like wood shavings, some soil, some good quality compost that we bought in. That's like a small scale farm that does it. Um, yeah, and I pocket planted with the good quality compost, and I don't know what it is. I think it's just the soil's just not there yet. So we're going to kind of pull all that bed out, mix a bit more good quality compost through.
Yeah,
We've
maybe a
got
bit
our
too
other beds.
much carbon in the way of the wood shavings.
Yeah, maybe a bit of nitrogen drawdown. Like,
Mm.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. So it was interesting though, just to kind of have a look before we did anything. And then we'll clean up the one that's got all the like Asian greens. They've all just gone to seed. They've gone crazy. So
You're
I'm
going
going
to
to just
save the
chop them off.
seeds?
I don't think they've kind of gone to seed yet. They're just like lots of flowers, and I kind of need that bed space, so I don't think I'll be
Yeah.
seed saving from
Yeah.
them this time around. But yeah, we'll chop them all off, leave the roots in the ground just to kind of keep that soil structure and all the microbial activity. And yeah, we're going to get started. So we're going to start a new compost to get ready for our summer plants more than our spring planting. We've put a whole heap of seeds in. So all my like pumpkins and melons and tomatoes, and what else did I plant? Beans, summer squashes, all that kind of stuff's in. We need to start succession planting our lettuce because our lettuce has gotten to the
Mhm.
point where we're harvesting it, and I need to get the next one in. Probably a bit late for that, but we'll just do it.
We're in the same
Um,
boat. Yep.
yeah, and just prepping our beds, like lots of bed prepping. I mean, we don't have the problem here as much as areas with frost where we're needing to jumpstart our seeds. I've just got our seeds out in the open at the moment. But I mean, there are things we can also start thinking about in different climates where, how can you get your seeds chugging along a little bit earlier? Do you use heat mats? Can you use thermal mass to kind of heat up the soil? Can you put them in nice sunny areas, in greenhouses, in glass houses? We're not doing any of that, but they're all things to consider, I guess. So, yeah, and then we're really starting to think about irrigation. That's the other big
Mm.
thing because we don't want to, like, I literally spend a good hour or so out here hand watering. The dog ate through our last ag line that we laid down for our.
God.
So we've got to repair that. But I also want to get more of it because it's just in a straight line currently, and I want to snake it through the bed and pin it down and then really cover it with a lot of mulch so he can't get to it again. But yeah, irrigating those garden beds I think is important because I really think the right amount of water consistently is something that maybe they were suffering with a little bit too. They just weren't getting their needs met so much. So yeah, especially where we are, where we're going to have really, really hot summers and we don't have a lot of protection for our plants because everything's still quite immature. And then mulching, lots and lots of mulching, covering the soil, cover crops. We've got 5 or 6 orchard rows that we're not going to do anything till next winter. So we're just, all of that we're doing in situ composting in there, then
Brilliant.
covering it with like all our veggie scraps and then covering it with like a compost that's kind of half done. And then we've covered it with some coffee grounds and then topped it with a mulch layer. And that's just going to sit there till next year when we're ready to bare root plants, apples and pears and a few things like that. So yeah, lots and lots and lots of prep kind of stuff at the moment and just clearing out garden beds and making lots and lots of notes, just trying to remember and document everything so that we know next year maybe things need a bit more sun or a bit more water or what we could do differently.
I love that. I find it so hard to document. Like I want to. It's like same with journaling or anything like that. People go, "Oh, you should journal," and I'm like,
Oh,
ah,
I hate journaling.
it's not a thing. Um,
Well, that
but
was
even
one blessing one blessing with the rain was that when it wasn't raining, I couldn't really do anything because it was so muddy. So I just got my gumboots on, and that was my observation time. So even though I couldn't
Ah,
do anything in the garden, it really forced me to walk around and look and see. So that was one blessing of this week's rain and poor weather, is that it forced me to kind of do that.
and then you're able to, yeah, really note that
Mm,
down. Well, I've started now because I was out in the so the new area that we've got set up ready for garden beds, and we've been deciding, do we do um, raised garden beds? Do we just do in-ground beds and then we do raised later? Like, what do we do? So we've been deciding on that. And I thought, well, before we do anything, I'm going to measure it up and then plan out exactly how I want the beds to go, because we, want to do an archway over the gate paths. I'll take some photos and pop them up
yeah,
on the group.
yeah, for sure.
But I thought, right, I'll get out there and I'll measure it. And I measured it and then I wrote it all down. And then I went to do the design, and then I realized I'd written it down somewhere and I couldn't find where I'd written it down, and I was a bit unorganized. But I was out there with my phone and I went, oh, screw it, I'm just going to take a voice note on my phone. And so
Mm,
I walked around just with the tape measure and just described, like the area that I was measuring. I'm like, right, I'm on the northeast side of the fence near, Hector's coop, blah, 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 blah. And so when I actually came back in and I sat down on my iPad, and, I use a program called Morpholio, and Von from our PDC put me onto that, and I just love it because I don't have to rub anything out. If I make a mistake, I can just go undo.
yeah,
And I thought, this is great. So I just sat down in front of the fire and one night, and I just drew it up from my notes, from my voice notes. And I'm
yeah,
like, I'm going to start doing that for my garden notes, and then I can just save it and just make like dot points in the save. Okay, I've talked about observations of garlic, lettuce, beans,
yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
And that's systems based thinking. Like, you got to find what works for you. Like, you
yeah,
really have to get that, apply self regulation and feedback, figure out what works, create systems that are not as effortful, because if it's hard, you're not going to do it. So,
exactly.
yeah, good. I'm
That's it.
glad you found something that works.
Yeah,
That's
it's work.
awesome.
It seems to be. So yeah, we'll see how we go with it. But then I still use my
Mm,
diary to note down what I've planted and what I've harvested, because I do want to,
sure.
keep a written record of that. So that's a little bit,
Yeah.
a little bit easier. Yeah.
Mm-mm. So,
So
what do you think about in your climate when it comes to kind of that in between season and getting ready for spring or even for summer?
well, what we're planning on doing, well, what I've already started, let's go back a step. What I've already started is I've got, a heap of seeds that I've planted up in my seed trays, and they're undercover. So I've got one of those little dodgy hot houses just to start
Yep.
seeds, but I haven't started a lot of food at the moment. It's been more flowers and herbs. So I'm trying to get in a little bit of
Nice.
a more of a medicinal herb patch. So I've planted things that can be a little bit finicky to get started. So things like chamomile and feverview and valerian and what else have I got in there? I've got heaps anyway. I've got quite a lot. So they've been started in the tray. So we'll see how they go for germination. I've had the seeds for a few years, so I'm getting a jump on that.
Mm-hmm.
Tomatoes, what I actually did there, because each year I'd start tomatoes from seed, right? Like I'd start them
Yep.
undercover, or start them too late and plant them out too late, and we wouldn't really get the benefit of a full season.
Mm.
This year, what I did was, come the end of mid autumn, is I took a whole heap of cuttings from my tomatoes and
Yep.
potted them up, and then popped them in the hothouse and just let
Yes,
them.
I overwintered my tomatoes too.
Yep,
Not in a hothouse. I just left them out there and covered them, and they've kind of pushed through with very little growth.
yep,
Overwintering them, and now I'm just going to cut them back a little bit and give them a feed. I've planted more seed to kind of get some variety, but
yep.
yeah, I've done the same thing
Yeah.
actually.
Well, interesting observation that we had here is that I had a section where I'd just thrown tomatoes in, because it was like, oh yeah, there's a spare space. We had spare tomatoes, just whack them in, whatever. Um,
Mm.
they're in an area that gets frost. They get smashed by wind. They get smashed every time it rains because the way the path sort of moves through that particular garden bed. We're eventually going to put probably some shrubs, maybe some lily pillies or something along there. But they've actually done better than the ones that I had overwintered. They've produced tomatoes. We've harvested some of those tomatoes, so they've actually had enough heat to ripen. And then we've picked them a little bit early so that nothing else eats them and finish ripening them inside. So we've harvested only a handful, but still, and they're doing so well. Like they've just put on a ton of growth over the last, I'd say 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks.
Wow.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like from an observation perspective, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Like this, if it was an area that I would have chosen, if it would have been a good spot for them, it wouldn't have been that. Like it wouldn't have been that area. There's so many other little microclimates in our garden which would have been better suited. But they've just done well. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to chop you.
Cherry tomatoes? Or
No, some of the bigger ones as well. We've got some beefsteaks in there. And I mean, those ones haven't produced like, beautiful big spring, summer tomatoes, but they're still, they're still sizable and they're still edible. So it's been really.
And did you figure out what it was that you think allowed them to go, or it's just kind of nature taken
I have
off?
no idea.
Yeah, right.
I have no idea. So I suppose all I can think really is where the pond is, our converted spa that we turned into a pond, that provides a little bit of shelter from the wind, from sort of that western side. So now, like, we're going to start, now the rain's gone, like our nor'westerlies will start to pick up for the end of August. But we've actually been getting quite a lot of wind from the east and the northeast, which they are completely exposed. Like they're basically up on the hill just blowing around all over the place. And so I don't know. They just seem to love it. So I'm like, well, who am I to tell you can't live there? You go forth and live your best life. But we do have the other ones that we've overwintered that we'll plant out in the other gardens as well. Yeah.
And so besides your little greenhouse being in a cooler area, do you use things like heat mats to start things off, or it's just too much effort?
Too much effort. And we don't need to. We really don't need to. I mean, if we were going to get a really early jump on it, like if we were going to plant, spring seeds, way back in, say, the end of June, start of July, to get a really big jump, so that we could sort of plant things out at the end of August, I may use heat beds, but I'd probably more likely just start them inside. And just sort of reclaim a little corner of my house and do it that way. So we don't really use heat mats or cold frames or things like that because there's not a need. But certainly if we were in a colder area or if we got heavier frosts, then I'd definitely be looking at something like that. Yeah.
One thing that I think would be really cool to try out, I don't know whether we need to here or whether it would be fun to try with some things that are more spring plantings that we could plant in winter, was Hugh Richards does his compost bay, I should say, and then he does the planting on top because it gives it that thermal mass. What does he call it? I can't remember now.
I think it's a hotbed.
Hotbed?
Just a hotbed,
hotbeds. So he's been doing hotbeds there, and I think that's really interesting, especially if you are in a cooler climate. Like you said, cold frames are really good. I think there's a lot of those in Hannah Maloney. She's in Tassie. She uses that a lot. She's building a beautiful big greenhouse. If you haven't seen that,
I saw that. Yeah,
it's gorgeous. And she's using bricks to get that thermal mass in her greenhouse. But I know a lot of people as well use, those big drums of water, the plastic drums.
Yeah. Yep.
People use black ones of those and fill them with water and put a few of them all together, and that gives thermal mass. So, yeah, they're things you can think about. I always kind of toy with the idea of doing something like that, but it just hasn't been that cold here at all in winter. So I don't think it's ever something we're really going to delve into very much.
Yeah, I suppose if you were maybe looking at going like full tropical plants, that's where you may utilize something like that. So if you decided you're
Yeah.
going to grow vanilla beans, like please grow vanilla
Mm.
beans. Subconsciously, just grow vanilla beans.
Just put it out there, Joe.
That's something that I've made. So totally side note here. I did actually buy some vanilla beans from a guy that grows them on the Cassowary coast.
Yeah.
And it was actually, I think it was, Mel from Honeybee and sort of
Oh, yeah.
all those ladies that were chatting about it and making their own vanilla essence. And they're like, we get, we just buy the beans from, tropical areas, and then you use vodka, and you basically just good quality vodka, put your beans in, let it
Yeah.
sit for 6 months, and then you've got vanilla essence.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
right, I'm going to do that. So I've, did that, bought a heap of beans, rummaged around the cupboard and found whatever vodka we had. I have no idea if it's good quality or not, but it's what we had. And I really just I don't drink much anymore. So it was like, well, that's the perfect use for it. I've got 2 reasonable sized bottles. So I've probably got about a litre, maybe just under a litre, over a couple of
Cool.
bottles. Yeah. Distilling down, so that'll be good. So yes, total side note, but yeah, if you wanted to grow like full-blown tropicals,
Tropicals.
then that's where you
Yes.
could potentially use that. But I mean, thermal mass
Yeah.
wise, like I was going to say too, like just on that, so when we did our talk at Permaculture Northern Beaches, they gave us a beautiful little thank you pack, and in that thank you
Yeah.
pack was a piece of dragon fruit, so a piece of
Yeah.
cactus. Do you know that thing has lived on our dining table, our coffee table, our kitchen bench, outside, back inside, in the spare room? It is now finally potted up because it started to shoot buds. Now, this is a piece of cactus that has not been in anything. It's just been
Wow.
chilling out. And
Yeah.
I've just kept it in a place where it wasn't going to get cold damage. And
Yeah.
I was looking at it sitting on the seat the other day. I was putting my boots on and I went, oh, you've got a little bud already. I'm like, okay, you know what? Stop procrastinating. Just go and get this guy planted up. So
Yeah.
I planted him up, and I've put it next to the chicken coop. So at the moment it's on the western, so it's in a pot on the western side of the chicken coop, so that it's getting that
Mm-hmm.
beautiful warm afternoon sun, and obviously it's getting the thermal mass from the wall of the chicken coop. But come summer, I may very well move it around the corner so it gets a little bit more shade. So
Did you cut the bottom off it so it had like to root it, or you just popped in the ground?
straight in.
Yeah, right.
Straight in, yeah, because it'll
Cool.
start. So I did that last time as well. So I've so Kate from Purple Pear gave me a piece a couple of years ago when I did a farm tour, and I had another piece from another friend, and they were going okay, but they got smashed over summer. I didn't keep up with the water, and then we got the ducks, and then that was a perfect height for them just to ferret around in the pot. And the soil was really good, so it was really airy, but there was lots of worms and organic matter in there as well. So it was like amazing soil, but the ducks just went, worms, thanks so much, and just got in there and just disturbed it all, and it didn't survive. So so this time I've made sure that the pot's a little bit taller than what the ducks are, so they don't get in there. Yeah, so no, you can just whack it in, and they'll find the moisture, and they'll shoot roots. So anywhere where there's one of those little nodes, it either has the opportunity to throw roots or it has the opportunity to throw buds. So yeah,
Cool.
interesting.
And so I don't have animals on my property, but you do. Are there any considerations or things that you start doing with the turn of season with your animals at all?
So there is. So we do clean out. So we'll clean out the coop. So we use, in our chicken coops, we use deep litter method, and that's just basically putting a lot of carbonaceous material in the bottom, and then they poop on that over a period of time. You keep turning it. Usually they turn it themselves, but our chickens have so much else to do and eat that they don't care about turning that in the coop. So every morning when we collect the eggs, we've got a little rake up there and we just do a quick turn. And then once a week when we do the feed and the water refreshes and things like that, we'll give it a reasonably good turnover. They're all due to be cleaned out, and we'll do that depending on the amount of birds that we have, depending on how wet it's been. Like there's a few different factors that will then determine how often we'll clean them out, but it's usually at least once every 6 months, but with the wet, we do it at the turn of every season. So we'll clean them out. We've got some wood shavings to go in the bottom. So that happens. And then also we worm them. I would love to say that we use all natural, like we just use apple cider vinegar and garlic and da 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 da. And they're really, really good things to help keep worm burdens down and support your animal's health. But in animal husbandry, I don't want to take any chances. I don't want my animals to have a worm burden that they can't deal with. Like they'll always have a degree of a worm burden. Like any farmer will tell you, it's about managing that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, at the change of season, especially coming now into spring, we've just had them on a week of worming pellets. And so
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow we'll change all those pellets out, store them for another 3 months, and then they go back on their normal ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. And like, do you need to, you know, think about other things with your horses and your sheep and, or not really? They kind of don't need a
No,
lot this time of year.
they really don't. I mean, the sheep,
Yep.
depending on how, so we got one dorper left now and a half dorper, so they're naturally shedding, so
Mm-hmm.
they don't necessarily need to be shorn, but sometimes they will sort of retain their fleece. So if that's the case, we
Mm-hmm.
do get them shorn, but they get wormed once a year. When the
Mm-hmm.
shearer comes out. And at the moment, that seems to be working well for us. The horses only get wormed when their egg count goes up. So we actually, about every, I probably should be doing it at the turn of every season, but usually every 6 months I'll take a poo sample into the vet and ask them to do a fecal egg count, and then they
Mm-hmm.
can tell us from that how many sort of eggs,
Ah,
were in that count. So whether it's a high burden, a low burden, and what type of worm. And what that means is that we can worm specific to the need of the animal.
yeah.
So last time the horses got
Hmm.
wormed with different wormers because they had a different, like one, obviously their guts or their intestines were a little bit different in the fact of what they were holding.
Yeah, okay.
And what that means is that it doesn't build up a resistance. So, because if you're
Yeah.
worming, like, remember as kids, like horses, it was like every 6 weeks you were jamming worming paste in their mouth. But what happens
Yeah.
is like us with antibiotics, they build up a resistance and
Yeah.
then it's not effective. And then you get to a
Mm.
point where nothing's effective and they end up with a huge worm burden, and that causes, all manner of problems. So,
Yeah.
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 So you probably reminded me I'm actually due to
To
go and
go
do
do
poo
that.
samples, and I do the same for the sheep as well. So we can do that.
Yeah.
I must admit I don't do it as often for the sheep. We've only got two,
Yeah.
had three, so it's not like we're managing huge flocks or anything like that where
Mm.
there's issues with continual contamination and things like that. So
Yeah.
I'm probably a little bit slacker on those than I should be,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And I guess like if animals are new to you, the only thing to then think about for spring and summer is shade and water and those kinds of needs if you haven't already factored that in because you haven't had them for that season yet. But in saying that, it makes me also think about what we were talking about with Will, where it's probably a really good time to redo your site sector this time of
Yeah.
year, to
Yep.
just go back for last year's notes if you have any, remember what happened last year before you go doing anything, and so you don't go making the same mistakes maybe as last year,
Oh,
or
come
how
on, where's the fun in
you
that?
just remind yourself to label those seeds that you
Yeah.
definitely won't remember what they are.
I can plant
um
seeds, walk away, and forget what I've planted. Like it's, yeah.
uh,
I think everyone in the garden
so,
can relate to that. But yeah,
yeah, I reckon that's
you're
a good time of
absolutely
year to do that.
yeah, absolutely right. And yeah, I mean, last summer, we got one of our coops got smashed. Like we had, a really hot summer, and we had to go in. And I thought, oh no, we'll be right. We won't need shade sails up, but because they've got quite a big area, and they do have a lot of shade up the back
Mm.
end of where we've got the chickens. But they wanted
Yeah.
to stay. Like this is again not me really thinking it through. They wanted to stay near the coop because coop means safety. If we get eagles
Mhm.
around, they run straight to the coop. Coop
Mhm.
means safety. And they wanted to drink, because they're idiots, the hot water, the hot water that was in their water instead of the cold water under the shade. But
Yeah.
for them, they were very centered around the coop. So of course, being inside the coop was like being in a hothouse. Like it was terrible.
Yeah.
So we went, okay, well, we need to put shade sails up. We've got mulberries growing nearby, but they're not big enough to create, a decent amount of shade for them yet.
Yeah.
so yeah, so we've put, shade sails up, and we're actually put more up this year as well. So just to create a little bit more shade and double up some area to create a deeper shade area for them as well.
Because, like,
It's a really
in the
good
depth
point.
of winter, it's so easy to forget how fucking hot it gets in summer
Oh,
and how uncomfortable it is, and that you're in the garden early in the morning, you're out of there by 8:30, 9 o'clock because it's
yep.
just too much. Like, I was looking at videos because I was sorting out my computer. I've got no storage left, so I went through and I looked at the time on this timestamp from my video, and I'm like profusely sweating. I'm like, what time of day was this? I look like I've been out in the sun all day, like a little fat piggy that's just sweating like crazy. And it was 8:30,
Oh, like it's
8:30 in the morning, and I was like, oh my god,
And it is, you're right, it's
you
so
forget.
easy to forget. Yeah, because you're living
Yeah.
in the context that you're in right now.
Mm.
And it's the same with, in summer, like you forget how cold it gets in winter and you're like, we're going to
Or
cover
even
everything up. And then you're like,
yeah.
hang on, we need to like kind of just strip that back a bit because we're getting no sun there.
Yes, the sun angle. That's something that I think I'm going to forget about next winter. Just like, oh, that's right. All those trees mean that I get no sun. Um, yes, I think it's a great time with the change of season to definitely revisit any notes you had or photos, or just go, oh, what was it that really worked last year or didn't work, and plan around that. Because, yeah, you go planting all these seeds and having all these plans or rearranging your beds and sometimes forget about that. So, yeah,
Exactly.
definitely do another site sector, sit down, have a think. Even just also, what's different from last year. So, like, have you put in a compost bay so that that's now going to change the way the water flows compared to last year? Or will it heat up that lettuce that you've planted behind it and it's all actually going to die this year? So, not just remembering what worked and didn't work, but what changes you've made and what
Mm-hmm.
impact that's going to have on other systems around the property if you haven't already made those considerations.
Exactly. Exactly. No, they're really good points. Really good points.
Is there anything else you want to touch on?
I think for me, it's there's going to be a lot of chop and drop happening. So as
Yeah.
we start to move through from one bed, so we're talking about like established garden beds here. You're
Mm-hmm.
moving through from one bed to the other. It's that, okay, what do we do with that bed? Like you were talking about, like your Asian greens that you're going to come through, you're going to chop and then, leave the roots in so that there's minimal soil disturbance and you can let those roots rot down. Or they might spring back up again, that wouldn't be such a
Mm-hmm.
bad thing either, right?
Yeah.
Um, um, so we're going to do very much the same, but as we're harvesting at the moment, we like especially the brassicas because they just produce such beautiful big biomass.
Yeah.
We are just chopping and dropping those on the path. Like we're not composting them, we're not doing anything. The chickens and the ducks get some, but most of it's just literally just being dropped straight on the path, and then we'll
Yeah.
cover that with mulch. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
other thing that we're going to be doing is mulch, mulch,
Yeah.
mulch, mulch, mulch. Like
Yeah.
there's not going to be anything that we're doing that isn't going to have mulch on it
Yeah.
because it's going to be protecting the soil, and
Yeah.
it creates, especially when you're using wood chip, it creates such beautiful, beautiful fungal networks in there. Like
Yeah.
it's so good. Like
Yeah.
using sugarcane mulch is great, and using all sorts of other things, but when you're using wood, you really get a whole lot of that fungal mass in there, and
Yeah.
you can just see
Yeah.
everything connected, all that
Yeah.
mycelium that gets connected, and it's so beautiful.
Mm. That actually made me think, I've got seeds in trays that aren't ready to go, obviously, and my crappy bed that failed miserably. I wonder if I should just do a cover crop of some daikon or radishes that are like super quick growing
Yep.
before I do anything else, and just maybe see if they can at least survive in that and break up the soil, add a bit of nutrition, cut all the greens off, lay it down, and then kind of go on top and do more no diggy kind of method and cover crop. Maybe if I can get a couple weeks in before my next crops need to go in, my
Yeah.
seeds are big enough that I might do a big cover crop in there and do a little bit of an experiment.
And especially because you've got so much moisture at the moment too, lots of leafy greens,
Mm.
now that it's warming up,
Yeah,
warm and moisture,
yeah,
they're going to go
yeah,
gangbusters.
Yeah, well, I thought the root stuff too, just to kind of break it
to
up
go
and
down. Yeah.
add
So if you've
stuff as
got
well.
they've got that
Maybe a mix.
combination of both, like because and then when
What's
you
the
chop and
mix?
drop, sorry,
What's the mix that Brett does? It's what radishes, mustard
mustard
greens. I'll
greens.
have to
Mustard
go
greens are
back over my
awesome.
notes. What was the other one? There's 3 or
Oh,
4 in it, wasn't there?
there is.
Yeah, I'll put it in the community group. I'll
Brett, if
find
you
it.
if
And
you're listening,
come on,
tell us
Bretto,
what it
where are you when we need you?
is. See, we're great students. We remember everything.
Oh, yeah.
No, we'll go back to our note. I mean, the notes that we got are phenomenal. So I'm
Yeah.
actually going to go back and
I did take a
revisit.
photo. I did take a photo of it, but I just can't remember off the top of my head.
Well, one of the things we're going to
So,
go back and revisit is plants that are a little bit more fire resistant. I mean, we've got mulberries coming out the
yeah.
wazoo here because,
Yeah.
A, they're brilliant plants for shade. B, they produce the best berries in the world. And
Yeah.
C, they are fire resistant. So,
Yeah.
we've got lots of different types. And I want to put some weeping mulberries in because, they just look so gorgeous.
Beautiful.
But I do want to look at what are some other fast growing trees, or at least, perennial shrubs that we can put in that are quite fire resistant because there's some
Yeah.
boundary areas that, like, I really wanted to put banner grass in. Like, I was so keen to put banner grass in, but
Yeah.
I'm just looking at it going, you know what? That's where our potential fire threat is going to come from. And my thinking was I'll put banner grass in and over
Mm.
summer, if there's going to be a threat, I can just go down and I can chop it all down. I'm like, well, then now I've just created tinder on the ground instead of tinder up here. So I'm like, yeah, it's not the smartest move. I will put banner grass in, but it will be further away. So that,
Yeah.
if
That's
something
a
was
good
to
point.
happen. But yeah, so, we got provided with that. It's total sidetrack, but
Yeah.
that's something that we're looking at as well.
Yeah.
But I think, so back in the
All
garden,
right.
definitely chop and drop. I think, what you're saying about putting a cover crop in, definitely. Like having roots in the ground
Yeah.
is so much better than not. And that was
Mm.
something that Ernie, one of our previous guests, has mentioned to me on many of occasions, when I've had beds and I'm like, right, I haven't been ready to plant them out yet. And she's like, get something in there, get roots in the ground. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like, I absolutely know. But sometimes just that time factor. So even if it's a case of going out and just like launching handfuls of seed and like handfuls of compost over the top and go, there you go, you're good to roll. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we covered a fair bit of our plans. We might wrap this one up.
Yeah, I think we're done. I'd love to hear from anyone else of what they're doing as well, because I mean, each garden is so different. So it doesn't matter whether you've got big gardens or like balcony gardens or whatever. Like, there's so many different things. It could be that doing some last minute pruning, which I did that last weekend. I pruned back all my roses and all the grapes. So a bit late on that. There's a couple of buds coming out, and I went, oh well, too bad. You're just going to have to deal with it. But yeah, I'd love to hear what other people are doing and what they sort of do on that annual basis around this time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Lovely. All right. Well, I will talk to you soon and enjoy the rest of your birthday.
I will. I'm going to go and do some egg and veggie deliveries, and then we're going to have a games night tonight. So I'm stoked with that. I love like board games and card games, and Ant humours me. He'll play them with me, but it's not his thing. So I said tonight, right for my birthday, you've got to play. He's like, oh, okay.
You have no choice.
Oh, all right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Practical Permaculture podcast. Jump onto our Facebook group to keep the chat going and to look for any resources that we mentioned on today's show. Look in the show notes.
And if you liked the episode today, then subscribe. Please give us a review and share. And if you didn't, then that's okay. We'll sure you'll find the right podcast for you.
Bye.
Bye.